Tonight, coronavirus cases on the rise. What hundreds of scientists are now saying about how the disease spreads and what they want the World Health Organization to do about it. Plus, a holiday weekend marred by deadly shootings.
It's gotta stop. It has to stop.
The latest on the violence that rocked cities across the country.
I think that our Lord and our God has a passion for the marginalized.
And see what United States Senate Chaplain Barry Black has to say about the racial unrest in America. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A warning as 32 states face higher confirmed rates of the coronavirus. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Jenna Browder has the night off. Well, with the number of infections on the rise, medical experts are sounding the alarm, saying the country needs to do more to stop the spread. CBN's Eric Phillips joins us with tonight's top story. Eric, the summer's warmer weather and the urge to get out and mingle is making things more complicated.
Well, John, it absolutely is. And as states grapple with how to safely reopen communities, what we saw this past holiday weekend was many Americans with cabin fever ready to shed those restrictions of the past several months. But at what cost? Social distancing and mask wearing did not rule the day in many areas as crowds gathered coast to coast this holiday weekend. As reports surfaced of COVID-19 cases surging, the president downplayed the news, blaming the increase on testing.
We have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
Medical experts disagree.
Yeah, so the facts on this are really quite clear, which is that the reason we're seeing an increase in cases is because we're seeing an increase in infections, not because we're doing more testing. And 99% of cases are not harmless.
Well, what I'd say is, any case we don't want to have in this country. Any death, any case is tragic.
Florida, one of the nation's major hotspots, now seeing more than 200,000 confirmed cases, 10,000 in one day alone. The state now accounting for 20% of new cases in the entire country. Also, Texas has seen a record number of hospitalizations this past weekend. The state has seen more than 2,500 coronavirus deaths.
If we don't change the trajectory, then I am within 2 weeks of having our hospitals overrun.
Yet, some Texans are refusing to abide by the guidelines.
Because I'm an American and I feel like I should be able to do what I want to. I pay my taxes, I live free, I want to be free.
It's false narrative. And when you wear a mask, which you can certainly do, you are further pushing the agenda that is condemning all of us and keeps us living in a state of terror.
In Arizona, officials say intensive care beds are running out. Only about 150 remain in the entire state.
We opened way too early in Arizona. We were one of the last states to go to stay at home and one of the first to reemerge.
Professional athletes are split on how to respond. As baseball prepares to begin its season in just a couple of weeks, 31 players from 19 teams have tested positive.
We want to play, and it's going to come down to how safe we're going to be.
In the NBA, 25 players have tested positive as teams will begin reporting to Orlando Tuesday. Players and staff from all 22 teams will be sequestered in a so-called bubble at the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, the U.S. has seen about 3 million coronavirus cases in total. About half of those cases are active right now. Of the ones that are inactive, many of those people have recovered, but about 130,000 have died. And as far as a vaccine is concerned, we are still 5 to 6 months away from a COVID-19 vaccine. And that's if, John, we're being optimistic.
And CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson is here now for more. Lori, more than 200 scientists say the WHO needs to give more weight to the airborne spread of coronavirus. How is that different from where the WHO stands now?
Well, John, the World Health Organization currently states coronavirus is spread mostly between people through respiratory droplets and close contact. This is a fact. We know that's how it spreads. And that means when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or even when they talk, especially loudly, or when they laugh, sing, or even just breathe, little infected droplets come out of the mouth and can land on the lips or in the eyes of a nearby person, or be breathed in through the nose. But if there isn't a person nearby, John, the belief is these droplets fall to the ground quickly and stay there. However, these 200 doctors from about a dozen countries want the WHO to also state the presence of extremely small particles, smaller than the droplets, called microbes. There are 1/1,000,000th of a meter and are much lighter than the droplets. And the theory is that these microbes are so light that when they come out of a person's mouth, they can linger in the air for a long time, sort of like a feather or like a balloon does, especially indoors where there's poor ventilation and the air is being recirculated. And the idea is those particles lingering in the air can be breathed in for a long time after the infected person is even gone from the area. And the doctor's open letter to the WHO will be published in a medical journal. The WHO has already said they will carefully consider the recommendation.
Wow, a lot of information to unpack there. Lori, if we're factoring in greater risk of airborne spread, does that mean protective behaviors like wearing masks and social distancing still work?
Well, COVID being an airborne disease is not really that well proven, John, and not accepted by all medical experts. Having said that, though, to answer your question, what it means is that face coverings and social distancing are just the tip of the iceberg. It means those things wouldn't be enough. For example, when it comes to social distancing, airborne means you could be alone in a small, poorly ventilated area, breathing in air contaminated by someone who had since left the area. And instead of regular masks, it would mean needing to wear N95 masks, the kinds that filter out those tiny microbes. It would also mean some buildings like schools totally revamping their ventilation systems by supplying clean outdoor air, minimizing recirculating air, and installing HEPA filters, ultraviolet lighting that we know kills the virus, and lots of other things that could be very time-consuming and, of course, expensive.
Lori, finally, we saw a bump in COVID cases after Memorial Day. Should we expect the same after the 4th of July holiday weekend?
Perhaps we'll see. Many municipalities have tightened their restrictions since Memorial Day, John. For example, in some places, bars and also beaches that were open on Memorial Day were closed over the 4th of July weekend. On the other hand, we are hearing a lot of reports of house parties that could turn out to be problematic. We will know soon. It takes about 3 or 4 days after infection for symptoms to develop, about 2 weeks on average between infection and hospitalization, and about 1 month on average between infection and death.
All right, CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, thanks for always keeping us up to speed.
My pleasure.
Well, the Electoral College is back in the spotlight 4 months before the election. In a unanimous 9-0 ruling, the Supreme Court said the Electoral College, that often confusing political body, can be forced to uphold the popular vote in their respective states. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now. Ben, what does this all mean come November?
Well, John, bottom line, Electoral College members can no longer go rogue. States can dictate exactly how they cast their ballot. They must vote with the popular vote. And this was done after a couple states, in fact, Colorado and Washington, Electoral College members did not follow suit. Justice Kagan wrote, electors have no ground for reversing the vote of millions of its citizens. That direction accords with the Constitution, as well as with the rest of the nation, that here the people rule. Former 2020 presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg tweeted, America would be better off if we got rid of the Electoral College. Now, the Electoral College makes up a very critical part of the presidential election. 270 votes are needed for a win. If these electors, they're called flawless electors, the ones that do not follow suit, if they do not vote with the popular vote, there could in fact be consequences. In fact, they could actually be removed as an elector. There were a total of 7 faithless electors back in 2016 for the presidential election, and this move by the Supreme Court aims to stop that from happening again. This as we continue to wait for the White House to make a response about today's ruling. John?
All right, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, right now, let's bring in CBN News senior Washington correspondent and our go-to court watcher, Paul Strand. Paul, it's rare to see the court issue a unanimous decision like the one we saw today with the faithless electors. How do you interpret that?
Well, John, what I think this means is that there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that this is the way it's always been in the Constitution and well, just in American history. In fact, only 4 times have we seen these faithless electors pop up in an election. The disturbing thing is that it's been twice in the last 20 years. So that's one of the things that they're trying to prevent is something coming up that might sway the next election. You might remember in 2016, there were a lot of the electors talking about should we all band together and try not to get Trump as the president. So it's a big deal. But Kagan, with this 9-0 ruling, she said that it's really clear. History shows the faithless electors should be faithful. They should not ever go against what their party or their state wants, what the people voted for in that state.
Sort of kind of like a preemptive strike. Paul, there are still 5 unanswered cases left in this term, including a big case challenging the Obamacare contraception mandate. Can you remind our viewers what's potentially at stake in that case?
Yeah, this is the Little Sisters of the Poor being dragged back into court again. They did not want to go along with the Obamacare mandate that they have to provide abortion-causing contraceptives to their employees in their health care plan. What's at stake here really is religious liberty. Do you have a right to say, my conscience absolutely forbids me to support this thing? That's what the Little Sisters are saying. And the Obamacare people were willing to say, well, okay, you can stand by your conscience, but you're going to have to pay fines. And those fines would have amounted to something like $70 to $75 million a year, which basically would have killed off the Little Sisters of the Poor. I mean, talk about poor. They just are completely reliant on donations and all. And the thing is that they do this ministry to old people and poor people who are dying, and often they're the last ones to see them across into heaven. And it's just a tragedy to think that they might lose that ability to operate and do this just because of this Obamacare mandate. And by the way, no employee ever with the Little Sisters of the Poor has ever even asked to have this coverage anyway.
Paul, what are some of the other cases yet to be decided?
Well, the one that we're keeping our eye on is a couple of Catholic schools. It's a thing called Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's the name of a school in California. A couple of schools out there had gotten rid of 5th grade teachers, and the teachers sued, saying this is employment discrimination. But there's a thing called the ministerial exception. A minister cannot, the determination of who hires or fires a minister has to be in the hands of the church. And they're basically, the churches, the schools in this case, they're both religious schools, are saying that we have a right to control who teaches the faith to our kids. So that's what's on the line in this case is, again, it's a matter of religious liberty. And can the government tell you who's got to be a teacher in your school? Do you have the right to say that person totally disagrees with our faith or our doctrine or their lifestyle is completely at odds? So that's what's on the line.
Paul, with just a little under a minute left, you've been covering the court for 3 decades now. What's been the biggest surprise to you with this latest round of opinions?
It's got to be Gorsuch's opinion in this LGBT case, where, we've heard the fact that, especially on the left, they were just crying that if Gorsuch and Kavanaugh get in there, it's going to be a conservative court. Well, that ruling was anything but conservative, and Neil Gorsuch is the one who wrote that opinion, and it sent shockwaves through conservative ranks. And I almost think that's maybe the reason he was assigned to write this, is they thought, well, if this new conservative guy in the court writes it, he's not going to get so much resistance that the word sex has been redefined now to contain both gender identity and sexual orientation. Because, like I said, that was a shocker in conservative ranks.
All right. Senior Washington correspondent Paul Strand. Paul, thank you for being with us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
A weekend of shooting leaves a path of devastation. We'll be back with that story after this.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep. as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, welcome back. Dozens of families' 4th of July celebrations turned to grieving after a holiday weekend marred by deadly gun violence in cities across the country. At least 77 people were shot in Chicago alone, resulting in 15 deaths, including 7-year-old Natalia Wallace. She was playing on the sidewalk at her grandmother's house Saturday night when she was shot in the head.
You got everything. On the news every day that a child getting killed, somebody getting killed, but you don't think about it until it's your own. To see my daughter on the table with a gunshot wound to the forehead, I mean, that'll change somebody's life.
New York, Baltimore, Cleveland, Memphis, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. also reported shootings. In Atlanta, more than 25 people were shot, including an 8-year-old girl.
We're fighting the enemy within when we are shooting each other up on our streets in this city, and you shot and killed a baby. If you want people to take us seriously, and you don't want us to lose this movement, then we can't lose each other.
Chicago police have someone in custody. A $10,000 reward is being offered for information in that Atlanta shooting. Well, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany opened today's press briefing with a statement on the shooting, saying movements like defund the police will make gun violence like the kind we saw last weekend worse. After her opening remarks, many reporters focused instead on a tweet the president directed at NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace and the White House view on the Confederate flag, causing the press secretary to abruptly end the press conference.
I didn't receive one question about New York City shootings doubling for the 3rd straight week, and over the last 7 days, shootings skyrocket by 142%. Not one question. I didn't receive one question about 5 children who were killed.
McEnany also told reporters there needs to be a focus on, quote, securing our streets and making sure no lives are lost. A call for intercession against injustice, what the chaplain of the U.S. Senate says Christians should be doing in response to America's unrest, when CBN's Faith Nation returns.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Welcome back. For 17 years now, a big part of Barry Black's ministry as the United States Senate chaplain has been to pray with and for lawmakers on Capitol Hill, their staff, and their families. But now he's interceding about America's growing racial tension. And as Charlene Aaron reports, he's calling on Christians to do the same.
U.S. Senate Chaplain Barry Black knows what it's like to pray about political differences in our nation's capital. As protests and riots continue following the deaths of George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks, Black is also pointing out the need for healing and change in America.
We have had challenges with race almost from the start, because when we said all people are created equal, we were not talking about, certainly not people of African heritage. We were not essentially even talking about women who couldn't vote. And so we have had to work toward a more perfect union.
During a recent Senate session, Black prayed about officer-involved shootings and the need to sympathize with those affected.
Today, we weep. We weep because every death diminishes us. We weep because of the grief of George Floyd's family. We weep because we know you are weeping.
A comparison Black makes to Jesus Christ.
I think that our Lord and our God has a passion for the marginalized. In the judgment story in Matthew 25 have to do with how do you make a difference in the lives of the marginalized? Did you feed the hungry? Did you give water to the thirsty? Did you clothe the naked? Did you visit the sick? Did you minister to the incarcerated? And did you take care of the strangers? So God has this passion for the marginalized and the oppressed.
As hate, sin, and despair fill the streets, Black is calling for a spiritual vaccine.
I think that people of faith need to be thinking about spiritual health, and that is a vaccine that will help eviscerate hate, eviscerate arrogance, eviscerate pride, and teach us how to fulfill the entire law.
Love, Black says, is the needed inoculation.
Galatians 5:14 says, you fulfill the entire law when you love your neighbor as yourself. That really is the vaccine. If we could only learn, teach, positively reinforce people in such a way that they actually grew in spiritual maturity and health until they love their neighbor as they love themselves. You love your neighbor as yourself, then you're down there with a knee on your neck in Minneapolis when you watch the George Floyd tragedy.
Despite the unrest across the country, Black says God is at work.
I firmly believe in the truth of Romans 8:28. In everything, God is working for the good of those who love him, who are the called according to his purposes. And I firmly believe that there are a lot of people who love God in this great nation of ours.
Meanwhile, the chaplain urges believers to embrace the biblical mandate of 2 Chronicles 7:14, which calls for humility and repentance as the way forward.
If every born-again believer would pray daily, 2 Chronicles 7:14, and then do their part in that promise, it's an if-then promise, we would bring about a revival in this nation that would dwarf the Great Awakening in the earlier days. That is what I pray for, and that is what I think people called by the name of Jesus Christ should pray for as well.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Amen to that. Well, The Clue, a popular TV host with a heart for people suffering from homelessness. The answer when we return.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
And finally tonight, his cancer fight isn't stopping him from helping those in need. Jeopardy host Alex Trebek and his wife helped to open a housing facility for the homeless near his Hollywood neighborhood.
I'm not one of those people who thinks that, we can't deal with the homeless near my house because that's bad. I don't feel that way, and I wish more people would react in a positive way to reaching out and trying to help their fellow member of the community.
Named in their honor, the newly opened Alex and Jean Trebek Community Room will offer temporary housing to 25 women and 60 men trying to get back on their feet. Trebek and his wife say homelessness happens to ordinary people facing bad circumstances, and they deserve help, not judgment. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.